Hello, everyone. My name is Mars Bravo, and 4 years ago, I was curious enough to start my own sign company in LA. Signs from Mars. I see some of you are wondering why I just said curious enough and not bold or fearless. Well, it's because I strongly believe that curiosity fuels the desire to learn and acquire new knowledge. It encourages critical thinking and it fosters an open-minded approach to different perspectives and ideas. So, technically, it was my curiosity that led me here today to be with all of you amazing creative people. So why don't you give yourselves a huge round of applause for being here today, bettering yourself in your craft. Get crazy. About 5 months ago, Gemini approached me with the idea that plaques had more potential in them. And they asked me if I was up for the challenge to redefine the concept of traditional use and look of plaques without compromising some of their existing good traits, like durability. The project consisted of designing 5 plaques specifically for the 2024 ISA Sign Expo here in Orlando, Florida. So, what do you all think I said to that challenge? Yes, obviously. And why? Well, because once again, I was curious. I want to encourage you to do the same. You're already here at the ISA Sign Expo, where you're going to see and meet so many people. You're going to see new materials. You're going to see new equipment. So be curious enough to connect with others, because that's how you can open the doors for an abundance of opportunity and growth. When I first agreed to do this project, what I knew about plaques was probably as much as you all know now. Less, actually, if I'm being honest. But what I did know was that through Gemini, I would have access to the latest technologies like CNC routers, laser cutting machines, direct printing, custom paint, and an entire plethora of materials. Not to mention the internet. Anything I don't know, I can just look it up, right? Well, I told myself, let's do it. Sure, how difficult could this be? I must admit, I did encounter somewhat of a creative block. I don't know what happened. I mean, maybe it was the tight deadline, or maybe the pressure finally hit me. I mean, we are pushing boundaries here, but I had no time to panic. No, really, I had no time. It was a tight deadline, you guys. So I reminded myself of something that I learned a long time ago. When in doubt, let's stick to the basics. I'm going to share with you the approach that I took to design these 5 beautiful plaques. And I am convinced that after you guys learn these steps, you all can do the same. If not, better. Starting with, what is the intention of your plaque design? My intention was to create plaques that were more than just informational. I wanted them to focus on their visual appeal. In this case, in a more elegant and dynamic scale. I was able to achieve that by the combination of materials that I chose and the finishes of those materials. 2, we have find inspiration around you. In our current time, we are flooded with information. Having my phone on me 24/7 has actually made me feel more overwhelmed rather than inspired. But I have to remind myself to revisit the basic principles of design time and time again. For this project, I was specifically inspired by one of my favorite rock bands. I was also inspired by colors in nature and by textures and patterns that I created from things that I found in my surroundings. So instead of waiting for creativity to arrive from some magical place, I just stick to what I know. I want to pass around this earth element plaque so that you can see the beautiful detail on those leaves. Believe it or not, those leaves are from my backyard. Well, no, not those specifically, but what I did was I picked up some leaves from my backyard and I made stems out of them. I scanned and vectorized the image in order to use that in my design. And I don't know about you, but I am extremely, extremely impressed with the quality and the detail that Gemini was able to preserve while direct printing onto brushed aluminum. So if you want to take a look at that, pass it around and check out the detail on that. Moving on to step 3, develop a concept. If you haven't made the connection yet, I decided to make the plaques based on the 4 main elements: water, fire, air, and earth. During this step, it can get a little tricky because a lot of changes happen during this step. And we have to be open to the idea to change things. While I was working on this project, it came a time where I had to redo one of the designs completely from scratch. I spent little to no time deciding to do that because I know that I have to be open-minded to changing things. But by developing a concept, you can stay on track while these changes happen. Moving on to step 4, experiment. This one is so fun. Step 4, experiment. As you can see on that earth plaque being passed around, I just started to experiment with different textures, different colors, different materials. I wanted to see what can create a visually stunning and memorable plaque while using Gemini's materials and capabilities. Moving on to step 5, functional design. How do we make design functional, especially in plaques? Well, we can use things like QR codes or augmented reality. This approach actually modernizes the use of plaques. That alone modernizes the use of plaques. And shameless plug, after the presentation, you can head over to the Gemini booth and find the index plaque. It has a QR code that leads you to the latest article that I wrote about this experience in more detail. And that's how you make functional design. So consider adding things like QR codes or augmented reality to your plaques to make them modern. Step 6, visual integration. This one is my pet peeve. Hear me out. The aesthetics of plaque design, and in all signs in general, should live in harmony with its intended environment. What does that mean? It means don't be that person who's making random signs that look like they don't belong there. How do we do that? Well, we can take existing elements from where the plaque will live. Where will it be installed? Maybe take colors from that building or other design elements in the surroundings so that you can implement your design into its forever home and help it be more visually appealing, because you don't want to be the person who looks like it's being forced the sign is being forced, but you also don't want to be having your sign not be noticeable. Wouldn't you agree that that plaque, the earth plaque, belongs at a national park, right? And lastly, we are on step 7, personalization. By personalizing your plaques, you can enhance the emotional connection somebody has with the plaque. If you manage to add a cool element that people can connect with really easily, your design is automatically successful. I want you guys to take a look at this water plaque as well. Pass that around. If you notice on this plaque, the water element symbol is in that plaque, and so is on all the other element plaques. But it's not the main focus of the design. However, on the index plaque, the triangle symbols that represent the elements is the main concept of the design. So finding ways to implement some detail into your plaques can help personalize and make your plaques stand out. However, I like to wait until the very end to do this step because I don't want to get caught up in designing around an element that was supposed to just be a decoration and miss some of the more important steps that I've shared with you already. So, only 7 steps to create amazing and useful plaques. We have intention in our design. We will find inspiration around us. We will develop a concept to stay on track. We're going to experiment and tap into our childlike curiosity. We will make them functional and we will integrate them visually. And lastly, we're personalizing them. So that's it. Those are the steps, right? So now you're wondering, well, cool, now what? Well, I know for a fact that by following these steps, your designs will improve drastically. But unfortunately, these steps can only get us so far without proper communication between sign designer and sign maker, the manufacturer. So it is really important to develop proper communication between sign designer and manufacturer. And believe me, even for me, it is so difficult sometimes to pick up the phone and call to make sure things are going as planned. But I know the reality is that efficient communication between designer and manufacturer is vital for the success of any project. Ideally, as sign designers, we must have shop drawings that contain material specs, dimensions, renderings and mock-ups, all this to keep communication with the manufacturer efficient and clear from the very start. I'm going to talk about changes again because guess what? Most of us know that changes continue to happen even during the production process. But with effective communication, these changes should actually improve the outcome of your design. And it should help you understand why those changes needed to be made in the first place. So by learning things like the letter height or the limitations on the strokes, you can actually become a better designer for your next project and have more time to do any of the other steps, like more time to experiment maybe. Why else is efficient communication important to have? Well, to address potential challenges very early on in the process. If you're a sign designer and you see something that needs to be addressed, do it at the beginning of your design process. If you're a manufacturer or sign maker and you see something, a potential challenge in the design that was provided, then this is a perfect place and time to bring it up and communicate with the sign designer. Don't shy away from being the person who takes the initiative. If your manufacturer is not calling you, just call them. Or if your sign designer is not calling you, just call them. Be curious enough to ask questions and to take the initiative. By learning how to apply these 7 steps and by learning how to communicate efficiently, Something as simple as plaque design can actually spark your creativity. But in order to translate your designs into tangible plaques each time, it is required from you to learn the materials and their capabilities. So do your homework, do the research, ask the questions, write the notes. There is no shortcut to this. Great design demands effort, and it requires hard work and dedication. My perspective of plaques has changed so much since I agreed to take on this project. I've been designing signs for about 9 to 10 years now, and I never thought of them in a creative way. But now I know that by following these steps, I can break away from the traditional approach and modernize the take on plaques. And with that, I want to conclude this presentation by reminding you that curiosity will prepare you to adapt to this changing industry and its technologies. It will help you all as professionals to stay relevant and competitive in this fun and creative industry. By approaching plaque design with this new perspective, you can transform it from a boring routine to a very rewarding and creative journey like the one that I experienced. I came all the way from Los Angeles, California, just to tell you that plaques are more than just inscribed metal plates. They are powerful symbols of honor, endurance, and celebration. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. I had so much fun. And it goes without saying, thank you so much to Gemini for this opportunity. I see a lot of curious and inspired faces, so we will open up the floor for some questions.
Okay, so we noticed, I think everybody can agree, that Earth Plaque
Yep.
is donkey heavy. But we expected the same thing from the water.
Yep.
And so can you tell us a little bit about the materials and why you selected the materials that you did for each one?
I am so happy that you asked that. I chose those materials in all the plaques very intentionally. So, as I said before, these plaques are based on the elements, right? Fire, water, air, and earth. So, for the water plaque, I pushed the boundary and I chose polished aluminum because to me, it gave a wet feeling and the reflection gave me sort of like a water reflection kind of look. And for the earth plaque, I chose Corten steel, not only because of its raw finish, but because I wanted to give this plaque more of a visual weight to it. As it is earth, it is the heaviest element of them all. So I wanted this one to have more visual weight to it. For fire, we're using oxidized bronze, which has like a burnt ashy finish. And if you leave this outside, it'll continue to age and look even more burnt. So that's why I used it for fire. And for air, we have polished aluminum again because it is lightweight and it also complements the white very well. So I really wanted to show how it's airy and lightweight. So all the materials were used very intentionally, and that's part of the experimentation step, right? So experiment with getting different materials and see how they speak for themselves so that you can design around that as well. Thank you for your question. That was awesome. Any other questions? Anybody else feeling courageous or curious? Yes?
What is your process for finding out about new materials that you don't know about?
Curiosity. So for this specific project, Gemini actually sent me a box of samples of many of the materials that they have. And I'm sure if you reach out to Gemini, they can do that for you as well. They have a lot of samples, and I know that they have some samples in their booth right now. So I basically had a box full of different materials that they sent me, and I was mix and matching. I was putting them on top of each other, and I was putting them side to side. I was actually also putting them against light to see how the light would actually affect the legibility or the clarity of my design, which is another point that you should make on your notes is how does light affect your design, right? Or the lack of light, right? So it's the darker area going to affect the legibility of your design, or is too much light going to be too reflective to the point where you're not going to be able to really see it? So I would just encourage you to reach out to whoever you pick as your manufacturer and ask them to send you a box of samples of materials, and then just put them side to side and see what looks good to you according to the design that you're trying to accomplish. Thank you for your question. That was really cool. Any others? Thank you so much for your time. I had so much fun.